You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster Joe Benazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from Cboe. The Option Block is brought to you by Cboe. Cboe's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Cboe Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively Cboe. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the Cboe products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back. I am back in the Chi-Town studio with listeners ready to hold court on another episode of the Option Block. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. Back from my little bit of a gallivant earlier this week. And I go away for a couple of days, and these guys just break the market in my absence. You know, I can't trust them at all, listeners. A little bit under the weather right now, so if I break into some spasms of coughing, that's why, listeners. Just giving you some fair warning at the top of the show here. Of course, if you want a little bit more content in your lives, only one place to go. theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. As we learn who's joining us on the old program today. First, let's go out to the southern volatility mecca known as Austin, where we are joined once again by the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. Mr. Meatball, how go things on this fine super green Thursday, sir?
Yeah, it's an interesting day. I'm wondering why we've seen the VIX rally a couple of points in the last 20 minutes. Just weird trading across the board.
Weird trading one indeed, and that voice means we are joined on the Thursday episode by the Flowmaster, not from his usual stomping grounds of Cboe East, but actually Cboe North, the Great White North, indeed, up in, I believe it was Vancouver or Toronto, one of those two. Mr. Flowmaster, where are you beaming in from today?
I'm coming to you from their Cboe Canada offices in beautiful Toronto. So came up here for a client education event and just continuing to watch the markets and talk to clients.
In honor of Cboe North, all of today's values will be converted to loonies. Does it make you happy, sir?
Yeah, I think that'll make things cheaper, right? It's right now the dollar's strong, and so maybe that's a good thing.
I think the loonie is about 3 cents right now, if my conversion is correct. I'll have to check that, but somewhere around 3 cents, I do believe. As we keep on rolling, we go out to the hinterlands of Chicago, where we are joined once again by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, are you planning any trips to the Great White North anytime soon, sir?
I don't know. I haven't talked about the loonies in years, so I'm kind of itching to go up there now.
There you go. Uncle Mike's itching. You're itching. We're all itching, listeners. So let's get to it. A little bit of the old trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, listeners. Welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading, what is lighting up our screens out there today, listeners. And it was a super red day to kick off the week back on Monday. Super red, to put it mildly, it's only fair that we call today's move super green, even though it isn't explosively green. You know, it's not blowing the doors off to the upside, but it is impressive nonetheless. About 1.75% to the upside right now in the S&P. 2.25% in the NASDAQ, and about 1.33% out there on the Dow. Our old pal VIX, as Meatball said, getting a little bit frothier. Was at about 25 right before showtime. That puts it down exactly 8 points from the Monday show, but got a little bit juicier. Got up to about 25.5 right now. So we'll see. We'll see what's cooking, what is lurking out there in the lands of VIX to give it a little bit of froth out there. And VVIX, speaking of froth, still very juicy at a 139, even though it's down a whopping 43 points. I mean, Monday's number was kind of just nonsense, listeners. It was a ridiculous day just across the board in many levels. Of course, last week it was a jobs number that really kind of set off all of this frenzy to the downside. It carried through over the weekend with that market action we saw in Japan, unwinding of that Japanese carry trade, spilling over into the U.S. on Monday. So it's only right, I suppose, that yet another jobs number maybe helps calm and allay some fears out there, maybe fears of recession, fears of a meltdown, the Fed waiting too long to act, all these things that seem to pile on going into the weekend and at the start of the week this week, seemingly cooling out there as we are seeing a lot of green on the screen. Let's go around the horn the way we started. Let's go out to the land of the Flowmaster, where he's busy converting all of his numbers in Trade Alert to loonies as we speak. Mr. Flowmaster, a wild week since we talked to you last Thursday. So let's start there. What was catching your eye as all this madness started popping off over the weekend? Obviously, spilling over into Monday's session where we saw VIX cash get into, ridiculous levels, a 65, I believe, ever so briefly. A lot of madness unfolding. So walk us through that. And then, of course, fast forward to today, a little bit of green on the screen was catching your eye, sir.
Yeah, so I did dive into this. This was kind of one of those trading environments that that we kind of all live for, right? It's really exciting, it's terrifying, but it is an opportunity to when you kind of know what you're looking at, to be very rational and make some great trades. Because what we saw on Friday was a hard sell-off, and then Sunday night, right, when Tokyo sold off almost 13%. The S&P futures were down 238 points. I mean, this was the first time in years that, I've had to go dig around trying to figure out what the circuit breakers are. And in fact, the Cboe VIX futures hit circuit breakers on the upside in that overnight session. So it was the panic. It was kind of that, capitulation we always talk about. That's where people don't really even give any thought to what things are worth. They just need to get out of positions. And so, what was really interesting, I mean, most of the excitement really was kind of pre-open on Monday. Monday still was. We set an all-time volume record on Monday of 71.4 million. Oh no, it was Friday. That was Friday. Sorry, Monday volume was still very heavy, but like I said, it was kind of a lot of the excitement was over by the time the market opened. What we actually saw in terms of the flows was some really large VIX call position unwinding. So it's interesting. Both Friday and Monday. The SEP 20 calls on Friday, about 93,000 of them, these are VIX SEP 20s, were sold around $4. And we can see back in June when they were bought to open for $1.43. Now it's possible that that's a nice big winner. It's possible they've been doing this for a few months, but and we were talking last time, and when you guys, the VVIX certainly seems to have been kind of a nice clue to the fact that people were starting to get a little worried. And July was, first half of July was basically slow and steady to the upside, and VIX around 12. Second half really was getting kind of ugly. And even that day where Russell was up a couple percent and the other indexes were down a couple percent, which really or were down pretty hard, was a day where it makes you kind of think like, is this something kind of funky is happening here? So the other big VIX trade that we saw was where they waited till Monday on and sold 70,000 of the August 21 calls. Those were sold in the $7 or $8 range, and I can see those bought to open in July for 78 cents. That's a $54 million gain, and we talk about that's basically when you have a hedge, and some people like to use SPX puts, and some people like to use VIX calls. They move the same way, but they're different. You really do need to be really, really tactical about monetizing it, right? You got to not only do you take off the hedge and try to get the best price you can, but what do you do with that cash, right? And so there's a great quant named Ronnie Israeloff who basically says if you own puts or you own VIX calls, the only way that makes any sense is when you have a windfall, you plow it right back into the market. So and then we're getting back into some kind of stability over the last couple of days. And VIX, VIX in the mid 20s is still a very high VIX, but it kind of reflects the kind of market moves that we're seeing, right? I mean, today we're up, more than 1%. The almost 2%, and 2% moves gives you about a 32 VIX, right? The rule of 16. So it's been a wild, kind of record breaking few days, and and we also know that VIX cluster or the volatility clusters, right? So it's going to stay a little rocky for a while, which is good because when you're careful and you're picking your trades and spots carefully, you can do really well in this environment.
Yes, a lot to unpack there as we keep on rolling out there, listener. Let's go out to the Southern Volatility Mecca. Mr. Meatball, we talked to you on Monday. Obviously, more unfolding this week. What's been catching your eye, sir, as now the green and the bulls taking the reins, sir?
Yeah, it's interesting. We got the volatility event in Asia, but we never really had kind of the realized volatility event here in the United States. If you look back at the other times the VIX has traded into the 50s, that 65 print took place when markets were ridiculously wide. But if you look at where VIX actually traded, it probably peaked into the 50s. And when you've seen VIX do that, those have been times when the market was down 5% over a 2-day period, 10% over a couple-day period. The S&P hasn't even touched its 200-day moving average. It kind of bounced off the 150. The move relative to the pop and implied volatility, not that strong, and especially concentrated in those Mag 7 names. Now, there's some belief that this carry trade that everybody's talking about, borrow yen, convert to U.S. dollars, buy treasuries, and then there's some belief that people were posting those treasuries and buying some of these Mag 7 stocks to really ramp up returns. And part of that unwind that took place on Monday, and part of the reason why Apple was down, a name like Apple and Nvidia printed down so low on Monday morning, was that unwind. But the stocks that weren't a part of that unwind really have not taken that much pain. So just a very interesting volatility event. kind of reminds me of, if this is as mechanical in nature as it seems, it's not that different from Volmageddon in 2018, but with maybe like a hint of the China deval trade in 2015, with maybe just a little sprinkling of .com frothiness over the top of it. But I just wonder whether there's one more shoe to drop here.
A little whiff of .com, a dash of Volmageddon, all kind of mixed together out there as we keep on rolling out to the hinterlands of Chicago, where he was just buying markets with both hands on Monday, listeners. He is a perma bull after all. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what's catching your eye as now the bulls back in charge, sir?
Well, I mean, I'd be lying if I said that no puts were sold on Monday morning. I'll leave it at that. What I like about when we get, what was really cool about Monday was the fact that we had such an oversized VIX move. And with that oversized VIX move, I remember thinking about this on Monday morning, thinking, okay, we have a VIX that's in the 50s right now. I mean, I know it printed the 65 or whatever at 7:30 Chicago time, but we have a VIX that's in the 50s, and the markets really are not down that much. And we really have not taken that much pain. Is there more to go? And of course, you wrestle with that. But when you have such an outsized move like that, to me, it was just a very good opportunity to sell some puts at that level. And so I think that when it came down, I was concerned on Monday, and I'm still concerned now that it came down as quickly as it did, in that we had that down. And then with that downtick, what's going to happen is there more to come, or are we going to go straight up? And oftentimes when we don't level out for a while, or we don't have more pain after that first initial blast, there could be a lot more to come. So I'm concerned now, but the fact that selling puts that's in the 50s and having the VIX in the 20s right now, that kind of eases my concern a little bit and is able to close some things off. But ultimately, I don't think we're out of the woods yet with where we are with this downturn in the marketplace. But as of now, we're really not down that much on the week, considering everything that we have experienced throughout these few days. And what's really crazy is that if we have an update tomorrow, or even a little bit more today, we could have a positive week when the S&P starts off the week down 4.5%. I cannot remember a time when I've ever seen that, but it is a very good possibility that could happen this week.
That it is. Let's keep rolling here. Let's go out to some of the other data that is lighting up our tape out here today. Listen, something else to mention. I know you're watching this as well, Mr. Flowmaster. We were just saying on the network not too long ago, a week or two ago, listeners, man, it's a pretty cheap time to buy puts. Hope you took advantage of that. That skew getting a little bit juicier, as you might imagine, after Monday's event. So yeah, listen to us when we tell you, listeners, maybe if you're worried about the horse leaving the barn, you buy some of that insurance before the horse leaves. Just throwing that out there. Let's see what's going on out here, listeners, and see what's catching our eye out there in another strong upside day. VIX looking pretty frothy as we're talking right now, listeners. 775,000 contracts on the tape right now out there in VIX land. So yeah, spoiler alert, that's a pretty strong day. The ADV also 1.12 million. A north of 1 million ADV in August? Yeah, that's not normal, listeners. So that shows you that there is some froth out there in these markets right now. Usually we're hanging out pretty quiet time. Everyone's off in the Hamptons or the south of France. Nobody's trading. So to see these kinds of ADVs, things are popping off out there. The big dog popping off in VIX right now. 56,000 of the AUG 17 puts, followed by 54,000 of the AUG 20 puts. So the 20 puts are opening, so maybe a bit of a roll-up out there for those puts out there, listeners. And then 53,000 of the AUG 18 puts. So you got a nice little juicy put strip going up for 1, 2, and 3 out there in VIX land today. All that adding up to 775,000 contracts on the tape in VIX land right now. SPY also no slouch. 5.05 million on the tape right now. The ADV about 8.6 million. So SPY looking frothy, looking juicy out there. The S looking surprisingly normal. We expect about 1.75 million, and that's pretty much exactly what we have. 1.76 million on the tape right now in the S, which is also kind of interesting. The ADV about 3.5 million out there. Remains to be seen if they can hit that today. Speaking of robust ADVs, small caps, I mean, they've been on fire of late. 2.36 million is the ADV out there in small caps. Doesn't seem like we're going to hit that today. 727 is how much we have on the tape right now. That's a robust amount of paper. Small caps up about 2% right now, listeners. But not enough, at least right now, to really threaten that ADV. But we shall see. The day is young. And the Qs rounding out our indexes here today, listeners. The Qs usually around 2.2, 2.3 million right now, and that's pretty much exactly where they are right now. 2.36 million for the Qs, the ADV 4.3 million. So it's got the rest of the day to put up 2 million contracts. Can it do it? I guess we shall find out. Also, is it a banger day on single names, listeners? The answer is not really. It's decent. But again, it is August, listeners. So put all this we're talking about right now in the context of we are heading into the dog days of summer, and maybe it makes a little bit more sense. Meta is at our number 10 spot this week. It's cold medicine starting to kick in. Meta, number 10. 523,000 contracts on the tape, listeners. 223,000 contracts. I get you to Meta. 503 is where it's trading. 503 and about a half. Up 14.5 bucks, or nearly 3%. So apparently all is right with the world. For Meta again, number 9, SMCI, aka Super Microcomputer Inc. 514.5, up 21.75, or a little bit north of 4%. Good for 252,000 contracts. And the number 9 spot, number 8, good old Hood, 1760, up about 45 cents, or 2 2/3%. So they've had an interesting week. They took them down to 1463 and their nadir on Monday. So they've rallied almost exactly $3 from that low. Of course, they started off ending the week last week at about 19.25. So they still haven't recovered all of that, but an intriguing week for Hood. Number 8, 261,000 contracts on the tape for the Hood. Number 7, my old stomping grounds, Intel, 1988, up about 88 cents, or nearly 5% today. Good for 326,000 contracts. And the number 7 spot, number 6, here comes our tech swath, listeners. Number 6, it's AMD, 336. About 135 is where it's trading, up 6 1/3, nearly 5%. Number 5, good old Amazon. Number 5, 466,000 contracts here as well, listeners. Amazon, 165.5, up 2 3/4, or about 1.7%. Number 4, one of our frequent offenders, climbing back up the ranks. It is Palantir, 29 even, up 2 3/4, or over 10% today. So they had a nice pop. They have a Microsoft partnership to sell AI to U.S. defense and intelligence agencies. So they've had a nice run. They closed the week last week 24 2/3, and they took them down to 21.71 on their low on Monday, and now 29.16. So a nice little run for them, listeners here. Number 4, 475,000 contracts. Number 3 is the fruit company, 213.80, up about $4, or nearly 2%. Good for 707,000 contracts. Number 2, it's Tesla, 199.14. So still below the 200 level, up 740 right now, or nearly 4% today. Good for 931,000 contracts. And the number 2 spot, and number 1, it's NVIDIA, 104.05. So back north of triple digits, up $5.14, or a little over 5%. Let's see, they went out the end of last week right around, actually about close to 108. And then they crushed them on Monday down to 92.05. So right now, a little bit north of 104. They've almost clawed back everything on the week out here for NVIDIA. Number 1, 3.25 million. Since we're talking about volume, and we got the Flowmaster on here, we got the numbers here from our friends over there at OCC for July. Remember I said earlier in July, listen, I said we're having some hot days in July. I got a feeling July might be coming in hot, and that looks like that is indeed the case. Even though the folks at OCC didn't send over the single stock numbers, which is kind of interesting. Usually that's a good bellwether for what people are actually trading out there. But overall volume for July up 25.5%. So that's a banger by any stretch of the imagination. ETF options up 34%, index options up 32.6%. Again, total options up 25.4%. Even VIX futures up 38.6%. So again, a banger month. Mr. Flowmaster, I know when you're not talking to us, you're crunching the flow out there. What are your thoughts on some of these robust numbers we saw coming out of July, sir?
Well, it was. I actually looked at their numbers, tried to make sure that they matched my numbers. It was definitely a record for average daily volume. I did actually have the breakout on ETF, single stock, and index based on our classifications. The single stock volume was 26.7 million contracts today. That was a record for the compared to the prior years. The index volume was over 4.2 million contracts. That was a near record. What's interesting with the index volume is it's not really all coming from SPX and VIX. You have Russell coming into the mix. Makes sense given that the kinds of days we had in July, and NASDAQ and XSP also kind of continuing to climb. So, it was kind of solid all around. ETFs were kind of the average spot. There's a little bit of growth there in the quarter, but that didn't seem to be the focus, which is a little surprising.
Surprising indeed as we keep on rolling. Like I said, listeners, a hot earnings week. Palantir on Monday, Uber, Rivian on Tuesday, Caterpillar. Good old Walt Disney yesterday, even though they have their big D23. I think that's a lot of people are hanging out. They didn't really mention much about their biggest segment of their business, which is the parks. That's coming up this weekend, so I think we'll find out what their response is going to be to all this stuff that Universal has both barrels aimed squarely at Disney. Can the Empire strike back? People will be waiting for that this weekend, so that'll be interesting. So kind of makes the earnings numbers this week a little bit muted because the big news is coming this weekend. But Lyft and Sony and Robinhood on Wednesday. Today we had Eli Lilly, Paramount, Papa John's, Six Flags, and a whole bunch popping off. We do have updated reports for you over there on the website. Listen, I think I can muster a few of these in what voice I have. Eli Lilly before the bell today, 772. I guess they don't believe in splits over there in Lilyland. That's where they were trading going into their announcement. They were pricing in 6.6%, and now they've moved 9.2% today. So blowing the doors off. I guess they got the memo out there. More vol is the name of the game out here this season. Let's go to Papa John's before the bell. 42.5 is where they were trading. They're pricing in 7.9%. They delivered 5.2%, so a rare bit of earnings underperformance out here, listeners. Now let's keep on rolling. Robinhood yesterday after the bell, 17.12. They were pricing in, my goodness, nearly 12%, 11.9%. They delivered 1.8%. I think, though, if we re-racked that, it will be a little bit of a different story. Obviously, listeners, we run these reports earlier in the morning before the show. Let's see, Hood's 1760 right now, so it's up about 2.75%. Still a long way to go to hit that straddle. They were pricing in nearly 12%. So a bit of earnings underperformance there, listeners. Luckily for you, we have dozens, if not hundreds, more tickers waiting for you over there on the website. I will spare Uncle Mike. I won't go through Cisco. But we have our buddy Stone Cold popping off next week. 14th after the bell. 12.18 is where it was trading. They're pricing in a buck even. In the past, they've moved $1.80. So quite the discount on their earnings juice. My goodness. I guess they didn't get the memo out there as well. We got Walmart coming up on the 15th as well. $67 is where they were trading. They're pricing in $3.30. In the past, they moved $2.90, so a little bit extra juice. Ooh, AMAT, 15th after the bell as well. They're looking juicy. 178.5 is where they were trading. They're pricing in, get this, listeners, $13.44. In the past, they moved $5.20. So apparently, they got the memo out there in AMAT land that more vol is the name of the game. That is also how the season is shaping up right now. 131% is where we're hanging out right now. Even though a little bit of a blip, a little bit of a hiccup on week 4, 99%. So the first dose of red we've had so far this cycle. Every other week, just explosive. We'll see if that can continue. We'll see if the Flowmaster can deliver as well. A little bit of the old odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
right, listeners, let's get weird. Let's get wild. Let's get crazy. Let's go out to a name we've talked about a lot of late. It's been pretty much one-sided paper flow out here for years. Yes, we're talking about Bumble, the platform for ladies looking for love. Apparently, ladies no longer looking for love. They are taking it to the woodshed today, off $2.50, over 30% just today, trading a little bit north of $5.50. So wow. This one looking rough. That puts them on the year now. They're off $12.50 or nearly 70%. If you've been listening to this show or Options Oddities for a while, you know someone's been aggressively writing puts out there, and they've mostly skated on their puts. I gotta wonder. I'll have to go check the most recent ones if they've been able to dodge this fallen knife, because I got a feeling they might be owning themselves a little bit of Bumble here, or a lot of Bumble. They were pretty sizable put sellers. Mr. Flowmaster, I noticed you noticed this as well. What caught your eye out here in Bumble land? Do you have the same feeling? You think this person, did they suck down a whole bunch of Bumble, or did they dodge it?
Well, I mean, this is really an interesting one. I just put a chart in the show notes where basically you can see the big spikes of red, which is each time that they've sold these mega blocks of downside puts, and I know we've talked about it. And what's really interesting is right before earnings, we actually saw them cover the full 40,000 of these. At this point, they were in the August 8 puts. Now they had to take a loss to do it. They paid 80 cents. I think it looks like they'd sold them for 14 cents in June, but they got out of them. And those are trading about $260 today on this kind of implosion of the stock. So that means that buyer managed to avoid a loss of almost $8 million.
So they were savvy. They got the heck out of Dodge, because they've been selling puts in this name for years.
They did, and we would always talk about it as it's a Buffett style trade, right? They're basically saying if the stock goes down that low, I want to own the whole thing. So I went back and looked. I think that they made money over time. One other thing that's pretty interesting in this case, though, is that the open interest did not go down, meaning that the whoever bought the first block was not the seller to them when they liquidated. So I think actually you have probably a market maker on the hook who did take a really big hit given this move. And somebody is choking on 4 million shares of stock. It's just not this put seller.
Yeah, that was my first thought when I saw this. Was like, oh, this person finally they've been playing fast and loose for a couple of years now, and finally came home to roost. In fact, we saw this print going out here today, and I thought maybe this person they were choking on stocks. They were trying to get what little they could, maybe try to wheel out. We saw 7,003 of these SEP 6.5 calls going up this morning on the bid. These are expiring on the 13th, listeners, for 15 cents. So it seemed like somebody was scrambling for any yield they could get. I kind of assumed that it was our put friend. Maybe it's our market maker friend. The stock was $5.50 when they sold those. So we're at about where it is right now. So it looks like somebody's saying, hey, I'm choking on some stock. Give me something. Give me 15 cents 7,000 times, please. Mr. Meatball, we've been tracking this person for a while. They've mostly been pretty deft. They've mostly skated on these puts. Looks like they were pretty deft again. They got the heck out of Dodge and covered their butts right before this apocalyptic sell-off. Maybe left some market makers holding the bag. What are your thoughts on this ongoing Bumble put saga, sir?
I mean, we've been watching this guy for a long time, and I think the lesson here is never take the other side of this guy's trade. He or she is always right. I don't. Other than this, can you recall a single instance where they took a loss on their puts? Other than this instance,
I cannot.
When they covered,
they've been pretty
at
deft.
The most opportune time. I cannot.
They obviously had their tendrils into the Bumble corporate offices, and they got the heads up. Hey,
they've got some sort of Bumble, ESP with this thing. I don't know.
Because that was my first thought this morning.
They certainly know the stock well. I'll tell you that.
Yes. My first thought this morning is, okay, the chickens finally came home to roost for this guy. He's been doing this for years. He's finally going to wear it to some of these puts. And nope, he got the heck out of Dodge. So he got that magic phone call saying, you might want to cover those Bumble puts. Go figure how that happens, listeners, some of these size customers. Getting these heads up out here. Either way, however he did it, he did a little bit of CYA and he lives to fight another day. Meanwhile, somebody's choking on a whole bunch of Bumble and they are scrambling for a lifeline, selling these 6/2s many times as they can for 15 cents, listeners. So it's not just you sometimes choking on some stock when you don't want it. Another name, speaking of choking on stuff, also for a similar level. We were talking about Bumble, $5.50. Now let's swap it with LUMN Technologies, trading 5 1/4, off about $1.36 or almost 21% today. They offer network and VoIP services for the S&P 600. Talked about these guys before. Let's see, trading 5 1/4 right now. So rough day for them. But even still, listeners, you know they've had a good year when they could sell off almost 21% and still be up 208.5% for the year. Because they were trading $1.71 a year ago. Their low was actually 78 cents. Looks like that was back around Halloween of last year. So from 78 cents, they've had a nice run. Even giving up their upside, they're still trading $5.30. I think most people would call that a good do. Mr. Flowmaster, sir, are you coming back to your old friend LUMN? What'd you spot, sir?
Yeah, so this is I gotta say it seems to exhibit all of the meme stock characteristics. It's up from basically $1 something to $6 in 2 weeks. About 2 million contracts have traded over those 2 weeks. There was some headlines, something about a deal with Corning or something, but it traded over 1 billion shares in 2 weeks, and this is all a name that only traded 12 million shares a day and 6,500 contracts a day if you just go back a few weeks. The trade that stands out is the SEP6 calls, which we actually saw 60,000 of them bought on August 1st for 35 cents when the stock was 380. This was one of these stocks that was moving $1 a day. It looks like they actually bought more for 45 cents, like another 20,000 or so right before earnings. And what's interesting is the stock did pop up to almost 7 after earnings. They were able to get out for $215, which is $10 million in their pocket. But if you look at they actually worn down with their earnings report. It's not really clear why the stock went up in the first place. I don't actually see it as a super hard to borrow stock, but it's kind of coming. It's kind of on its way back down. It seems, because it's down a decent chunk. So it is. I can't imagine it's the same person that was active in Bumble, because it's such a different style of trade. But it kind of is in the same ballpark in terms of size and profitability and perfect timingness of the whole thing.
Well timed indeed, Mr. Meatball. We've been talking about LUMN a little bit of late. Looks like another person got in and got out in a pretty timely fashion, sir. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this thing's been moving up and down a ton. Huge short squeeze, big move on earnings, kind of the classic hangover post short squeeze. Interesting to see. I'm very interested to see how far it pulls back. Does it get back below $4, or is this the 1 day pullback and then it takes off? How about the 10-day realized volatility of 375 and an implied volatility that topped out at over 200%? These guys were paying up for their options. I'll tell you that much.
What's a 300 vol amongst friends, sir? It's nothing. Just a mere hiccup out there, listeners. All right, we'll change gears here for our final one, listeners. Let's go from well-timed trades in both LUMN and Bumble. Let's see how well-timed our friends are here. Let's go out to Century Aluminum, as well as the Brits like to say, ticker symbol CENX, trading $12.85 right now, up about 56 cents or nearly 5% today. So a nice little day out here for Century Aluminum. Let's see, on the year ago, they were trading a little bit shy of $9. So they're up nearly $4 or about 43% on the year. Pretty good run for them, even though they topped out, looks like 21 1/3 back about a month ago in early July. So, they actually sold off quite a bit from there. And they're still up 43%. They're up to 21 in the third and now down to, about $12. And they got as low, let's see, this week, they got to $11.59 on Monday. So they really gave up the ghost and now hanging out at $12.86. So still a good year for CENX, but been cut pretty much almost in half from their highs of just a month ago out there. So interesting stuff. And it looks like, listener, somebody maybe thinks the partay shall continue. We've got the AUG 15s going up right now, listeners. The AUG 15s going up for 24 cents, pretty much right off the offer, 3,458 times. This is a 125 vol if you are intrigued. These are pre-earnings. They have earnings, looks like, today after the bell. When they bought these, the stock was $12.41, so they are winning the first sniff test. The stock has moved about 40-odd cents in their favor. But they got to get going on these bad boys. They have until next week, obviously. We'll know after the close today whether these work. So maybe I'll make a note to, let's pay these off next week here on the show. Mr. Flowmaster, what are your thoughts? Somebody swinging for the fences, betting for a little bit of a return of upside here in CENX, sir.
Well, it does have earnings tonight, I think, and the straddle's trading around 14%, and the average move is only 7%. So it does seem like somebody's looking for kind of a little bit of an outsized move in it. I'm not sure what they're doing, but I do like to see a nice, confident directional trade.
Mr. Meatball, has CENX come across your unusual activity radar at all? And what do you think about these folks swinging for a little bit of upside going into earnings tonight, sir?
This is not one I've seen before, but what I've noticed about these earnings plays is what the single just going straight calls and puts. Those have been very swing and miss. When these earnings plays have come in the form of a complex spread, they've been surprisingly correct. So take note, folks.
We shall see. You like these, listeners? A little bit of upside action in rolled aluminum. We'll know today after the bell if these are a good do or not. As we keep on rolling, let's go to a little bit of the mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the Mail Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Mail Block. Let's see what you folks have on your brains. We asked you at the weekend, we kind of touched on this on the Monday show as well. So we looked like the futures were heading into a nasty open on Monday. We didn't know quite how nasty. We asked you, where do you think VIX will open on Monday morning? And over half of you, 52.3%, chose the right answer, north of 26. We didn't know we'd get nearly 40 handles above that in the VIX cash. But c'est la vie, we needed an option for north of 40, even though I did joke on our show chat that I had some VIX puts in my back pocket. So clearly VIX would open north of 40. I didn't know how right I would be, listeners. So yeah, popping hard. You folks were on the right tip, north of 26 on the open on Monday. You folks also on the right side of history. We had a flash poll after the show on Monday. It was only up for a little bit, but a lot of you folks sharing your thoughts on this. Glad to see. I think we're all on the same page. A lot of people were talking. There were rumors out there. I forgot who it was, if it was Goldman or others out there, putting the whispers out there that after the weekend's action, after Monday's action, of course, the Fed was going to have to do an emergency rate cut. Seemed like nonsense to me, seemed like nonsense to a lot of people on the network. But of course, you folks in the audience are the ultimate arbiters at the end of the day. And we've asked you folks, very quick flash poll, should the Fed enact an emergency rate cut? 70% of you said no, only 30% said yes. So calmer, cooler, saner heads prevailing out there. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, I believe when I floated this question on the Monday show, you were on the no side. Are you surprised or perhaps happy that our audience agrees with us? They think no reason for the Fed to cut things early, sir.
Yeah, I'm very happy that our audience agrees with us, and happy that it doesn't look like it's going to happen. I think it would be very overreactive. The big news of the week, in my opinion, is not the 4% down open on the SPX. I think the big news is just the spike in the VIX. That does not warrant a Fed rate cut, in my opinion. I think that we need to, I would like to see us cut some rates, honestly, but not based on this reaction. That would be very knee-jerk, and I think that would be a poor decision by the Fed.
Since we got the Flowmaster, we were just talking about volume earlier. I want to jump to this question here from Bronco19. He says, why do you think options volume was down in June? Is this the beginning of a new volume trend? Of course, he is correct. The June OCC numbers, overall volume, was down 4.7%. Of course, as we just broke down, listeners, July a banger by just about any stretch of the imagination out there, up 25.5% overall. So he was worried, Mr. Flowmaster, this was the beginning of a downturn in volume. What do you think? You think July's numbers should put those fears to rest, sir?
Yeah, I think July made up for it. I mean, June was a very low realized vol month, and we do see that the single stock volume tends to drop off when you get these quiet days. The index volume stays pretty stable, but that was kind of a light month all around. And I would assume that just kind of given that the disruption we just had, and you've got the rest of the year is full of important things like the election and the next couple Fed meetings. So I think we're going to just kind of stay I think we're going to stay above 20 possibly for the rest of the year in VIX. I think we're just going to be bouncing around, and I think volume's going to stay strong.
Above 20 the rest of the year in VIX, says the Flowmaster. Intriguing stuff. Might be a fun question of the week out there as well, listeners. Do you agree, disagree? As we keep on rolling and go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, let's go around the block. Let's start with the greasiest of meatballs. Mr. Meatball, sir, what are you keeping an eye on until the Monday episode?
Well, obviously the markets. We have yet to see a day with less than 100-point range this week. I want to see if we see things calm down. I'm watching the VIX and the VIX curve. Are we going to stay in backwardation for longer, or are things going to calm down? That's really what I'm paying very close attention to.
Are you feeling that? You feeling what Henry was just laying down? VIX above 20 for the rest of the year, sir?
I don't know about the rest of the year. I don't know about that, but the rest of the month potentially. Like I said, I think it kind of depends whether we get another shoe to drop, and what is that shoe? Is there more of this Japan thing, or is there a bond auction thing, or what? But my feeling is that right now, at the pace this is going, if a shoe doesn't drop, we'll be back below 20 in September. But inside, looking at how we're moving, what the daily gyrations look like, there's a shoe, and it'll probably drop between now and Friday.
Mr. Flowmaster,
Next Friday.
I'm not misquoting you, right? You did say VIX above 20 for the rest of the year. That is correct, sir?
It's probably on tape, so I did say it. Now I'm thinking about it. Maybe I meant.
It's too late. It's too late, sir. It's going out to our audience now. Our audience will get a chance to vote on it if they agree or disagree. Mr. Uncle Mike, are you feeling VIX above 20 for the rest of the year? And then what are you keeping an eye on until the Monday episode, sir?
Well, I think that in addition to keeping an eye on the VIX at this stage, and it's a crazy market if Uncle Mike's talking about the VIX, but I think in addition to continuing to keep an eye on the VIX, we need to see what kind of reaction we get with bonds, in that we're not getting, we're not getting the inverse reaction of stocks go down, bonds go up based upon what happened on Monday. And so I think that's something we need to continue to keep an eye on of where it's going. We continue to have yields below the 4% level on the 10-year note, and we're still above 5% on the 1 to 3 month treasuries. So I'm continuing to watch that because it's weird enough with it inverted the way it is. But combine that with a 65 VIX for about a minute on Monday, a lot of weird things to watch.
A lot of weird things indeed, listeners. Of course, that music means we're out of weird things for this episode. But don't worry, no rest for the wicked, no rest for my voice. I'll be back in a little bit on TWIFO. I will be joined by Martin Franchi, the CEO at Ninja Trader, to break down all the action over there on the futures options front. So stay tuned for that. If you're in the pro chat, just hang out. I'll be back in a little bit. If you're listening on podcast platforms around the globe, just hit next. The show should be hanging out, waiting there for you. And Mr. Flowmaster, while they're waiting for the next show to hit, if they want to check out some cool goodies from, could be Cboe North or Cboe East or Cboe proper, where should they go? What should they do?
You can head over to Cboe.com/RMA, where we have all of our products, which include Trade Alert, Live Vol, Silex, and FT options, and we're happy to have you.
You got any fun plans out there? How long are you in the frozen north for? So are you gonna maybe have some poutine?
No, I'm heading back in a few hours, but it's been nice, and it was nice to get out of New York City where it had been just swelteringly hot for weeks and weeks.
There you go, to the frozen north. Check him out over there, listeners, what he and the rest of the crew are working on. Cboe.com/RMA, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. And Mr. Meatball, sir, if they want to kick the tires and light the fires on Option Pit U, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter at Option Pit. I'm going to be releasing my long-awaited SPIX strategy next Wednesday, so be on the lookout for that.
Oh, we finally have a date.
Yes.
Next Wednesday. All right, you've dangled this in front of us for what? 8, 9, 10 years? I've lost track now. So
I know, I'm excited.
I want to hear about this brand new SBIC strategy. Sign up for the webinar there, listeners. OptionPit.com. You too can learn more. And Mr. Uncle Mike, while they're signing up for webinars, you probably got one or two in the offing. Where should they go to learn more? Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, you got some webinars cooking up your sleeve, sir?
Sorry, it was muted. Yeah, follow me on Twitter at Mike Tosaw, Tosaw. I have another webinar coming up next Tuesday night. Follow me on Twitter and check it out to find out more info on it. Trying to do one once a week going forward. And if you're looking for a financial advisor who is in the option space, go to stcharleswealth.com. Would love to have a conversation with any of our audience.
Check them out over there, stcharleswealth.com. That is going to do it for us on the old option block today. Back again in a little bit for TWIFO. Then back again tomorrow. Hopefully I'll have more voice then for noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern to talk all things vol on Volatility Views. Followed after that exclusively for you pro folks one last time for the week over there on Options Oddities. You know where to go to get access to all that fun. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro. Then we're back again on Monday. Another episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by Cboe. Cboe's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Cboe Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively Cboe. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the Cboe products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com optionsdashins.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.